Welcome, dear students. Let me take you on to the journey of learning about demand. We have learned at length about the concepts of demand and quantity demanded, individual and market demand schedules and curves, the factors affecting demand, various types of goods, the law of demand, its assumptions and exceptions. And with this topic today, what we're going to learn about changes in demand, we're coming to the end of the demand part of demand analysis. So let me take you on to learn this topic in a better way. Are you ready? Then let's go forward. In this lesson in economics, we will learn about the variations in demand, which are of two types, extension in demand and contraction in demand. We will also learn about the shifts in demand, that is increase in demand and decrease in demand. What are variations in demand? Variations in demand refers to change in quantity demanded of a commodity due to change in own price of the commodity, other things remaining the same. Moving from one point to another along the same demand curve is called variation in demand. So you can see I've just used a caricature here to demonstrate if this yellow line is our demand curve, then moving up and down along the same demand curve like we do when we climb up and down the stairs would be a nice example for you to remember that in variations of demand we move up or down the same demand curve. That happens because variations in demand take into account the change in the quantity demanded due to a change in price. So remember this. We now have the first case of variation in demand, and that is extension in demand. In the diagram, extension is shown by a movement downwards along the same curve from point A to point B on the demand curve DD. When price is OP, the quantity demanded is OQ. And when price falls to OP1, quantity demanded rises to OQ1. So clearly we can see in this diagram of extension of demand that there is a movement from point A to point B along the same demand curve. How did that come about? It comes about because price falls from OP to OP1, and as a result, quantity demanded rises from OQ to OQ1. This is an illustration of extension in demand. So what is extension in demand? It is also called as expansion of demand. Let us define it. Other things being equal, when with a fall in price, quantity demanded of a commodity rises, it is called as extension of demand. In this case, there is a movement from left to right along the same demand curve. Now let us study the second case of variation in demand, and that is contraction in demand. In the diagram, contraction is shown by a movement upwards along the same demand curve from point A to a point B on the demand curve DD. When price is OP, the quantity demanded is OQ. And when price rises to OP2, quantity demanded falls to OQ2. So here we see there is a movement upwards from right to left, from a point A to a point B on the same demand curve. And that comes about because price rises from OP to OP2. As a result, quantity demanded falls from OQ to OQ2. This is an illustration of the contraction in demand. Now let us define it. What is contraction in demand? Other things being equal, when with a rise in price, quantity demanded of a commodity falls. It is called contraction of demand. In this case, there is a movement from right to left along the same demand curve. Now let us move on to study the next aspect of changes in demand. What are shifts in demand? Shifts in demand refer to all such situations when demand for a commodity increases or decreases due to a change in other factors other than own price of the commodity. That is, moving from one point on one curve to another point on another curve. I have given you an illustration of two escalators. So you could liken them to your demand curves. And in shifts of demand, we will be moving from one demand curve to another. So I'd like you to keep this in your mind so that you kind of connect to the concept of shifts in demand just by this silly illustration, if you'd like to say. Let us now try to study the concept of increase in demand with the help of a schedule and a diagram. As you can see, in the first column we have price, various possible prices from 1 to 50, and the original quantity demanded by a consumer at all these various possible prices. Now consider that factors other than price have changed. Perhaps the consumer's income might have increased. Maybe the tastes and preferences have changed favorably towards this good that we are talking about right now. Maybe the price of the related goods might have increased, so the consumer chooses to demand more units of the commodity. Maybe the consumer expects or has an expectation that the prices in the future of this commodity may rise. And so, in the present, he now chooses to demand more units of the commodity. For example, at price rupees 10, earlier the consumer was demanding 50 units. But now perhaps his income has increased, so he's in a position to demand a higher quantity. Same way, at price 30, earlier the quantity demanded was 30 units. But now perhaps the tastes and preferences have changed and the consumer demands a higher quantity now at the same old price. Say again at price 50, he has an expectation that this same commodity is going to rise in the future, the price of the commodity. So he decides at price 50, he will now buy or demand 20 units. If I plot price versus the quantity demanded earlier, I will get the demand curve D, the original demand curve. And if I plot the price versus the new quantity demanded, I will get a new demand curve D1, D1. As you can see, I have chosen one price here to demonstrate to you that at the same price, a higher quantity is demanded. So I've taken price 30. At price 30, 30 units are demanded. We call that Q. We generalize it with the letter Q. At the same price 30 or OP, on the new demand curve, a higher quantity is demanded, and that is 40. And I've given the letter Q1. So the quantity demanded has now increased from OQ to OQ1. So there is a movement from a point, say for example A on DD to a point B on D1, D1. You can clearly see there is a forward shift in the demand curve. And so we also call the case of increase in demand as forward shift in demand. Let us now learn how to explain the diagram of increase in demand. In the diagram, an increase in quantity demanded of a commodity at its existing price is seen. When price is OP, the quantity demanded is OQ. Even when price remains constant, the consumer demands OQ1 units. This may be due to changes in other factors other than price, like increase in income, favorable changes in tastes and preferences, fall in the price of complements, rise in the price of substitutes, and so on. So let us now define what is increase in demand. It is a situation when quantity demanded of a commodity increases even when own price of the commodity is constant, or it is a rise in demand caused by a favorable rise in factors other than price. I am giving an example here. The demand for gold may increase even if the price of gold is constant, perhaps due to an increase in income. Let us now try to study the second case of shifts in demand, that is decrease in demand. We have a schedule here. As you can see, the various possible prices and the quantity demanded at these prices. Now consider that other factors have changed unfavorably. For example, perhaps there is a fall in the income of the consumer. Perhaps the taste and preferences have changed unfavorably towards this product or good that we're talking about. Maybe he doesn't like it anymore as he used to before. Perhaps the price of the related good has fallen, so he shifts his demand to the related good. Perhaps he has an expectation that in the future the price of this commodity may fall, and so he reduces his demand now so that he can buy it when the price falls in the future. So therefore the consumer defines a fresh new quantity demanded at various possible prices. At price ₹10, he used to earlier demand 60 units, but now that factors have changed unfavorably, the quantity demanded decreases to 50 units. Similarly, you can see at price 30, earlier the quantity demanded was 40 units, but now the quantity demanded falls or decreases to 30 units. The same points or the prices versus the original quantity demanded is plotted here on the demand curve DD. And the price versus the quantity, new quantity demanded is shown on the demand curve D2D2. As you can see, there is a backward shift. There is a new demand curve which has shifted backwards because it clearly shows the decrease in the demand. At the same price 30 or OP, earlier the quantity demanded was OQ or 40 units. But now that the demand has decreased due to factors other than price, the quantity demanded at the same old price is now a lesser quantity, that is OQ2. So we can clearly see that the quantity demanded has fallen from OQ to OQ2, which is a new quantity. However, the price has remained unchanged. So we are moving from point A to a point B on another curve. Therefore, the case of decrease in demand is also known as backward shift in demand. Let us now understand how to explain the diagram of decrease in demand or backward shift in demand. In the diagram, a decrease in the quantity demanded of a commodity at its existing price is seen. When price is OP, the quantity demanded is OQ. Even when the price remains constant, the consumer demands OQ2 units. This may be due to change in other factors other than price, like decrease in income, unfavorable change in tastes and preferences, fall in the price of substitute goods, and rise in the price of complementary goods. Diagrammatically, it means a backward shift in demand curve from DD to D2D2. The consumer shifts from point A on DD to point B on D2, D2. Let us now define what is decrease in demand. It is a situation when quantity demanded of a commodity decreases even when own price of the commodity is constant, or it is a fall in demand caused by an unfavorable change in factors other than price. For example, the demand for houses or residential flats may decrease even if the price of houses or flats is constant, perhaps due to a decrease in income. So children, today we have studied about the variations in demand, that is extension and contraction in demand, and the shifts in demand, that is increase and decrease in demand. I hope you have understood the concepts clearly, but I still would like to urge you to watch the video again so that you get a clear understanding of the concepts and the diagrams that have to be drawn. Thank you for giving me a listening ear, and God bless you all.